Hi, everybody. My name is Dea Ore, and I am co-founder and co-author of Empowering Writers. And thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Today, we're going to be talking to Kate Campbell, who is the principal of Anna Ware Jackson School, Amy Traficante, who is a literacy coach there for K-6, and Allie Dunn, a grade 2 teacher. And they're going to talk a little bit about some of the successes they've had in powerful practices in writing and instructional leadership. So we're looking forward to that. Just a couple of housekeeping issues as we start. If you have any questions throughout the broadcast, please enter your questions in the question box. And if you have to, or you can go through the chat also to reach us. We will be presenting and listening to Kate and Amy and Allie till 2:15, so 45 minutes we'll have for that. At the 2:15 mark, we're going to stop for any questions and that anybody may have. So we'll plan to build that right in. And with that, I'm going to turn it right over to Kate and Amy.
Thank you, Dea, and everyone welcome. Thanks for tuning in with us today. My name is Kate Campbell. I'm the principal at the Anna Ware Jackson here in Plainville, Massachusetts. We are a unique little district. We are preschool to 6th grade here in Plainville. We have 2 buildings. I'm the principal of the Anna Ware Jackson, and I'm pre-K to 3rd, and then next door is 4, 5, and 6. After 6th grade, our kids do regionalize into a bigger district with Rentham and Norfolk. So that is a little bit different than some of our bigger districts that we will be talking to today. Our town, like many of you listening, have had some major shifts in your populations with both needs and struggles and learning styles. So I do feel very confident in saying many of your struggles, not only myself, but Amy and Allie have also endured as we're trying to educate all of our kids to the best of our ability. Our population has also shifted in our needs of free and reduced. We've almost doubled our needs of free and reduced students in the past couple of years. I'm very lucky in that I was able to work in the city of Attleboro for 20 years. I was able to be a classroom teacher, a special ed teacher. I was able to go and be a literacy coach, and also I'm able to be a principal in Attleboro before I came over to Plainville. If you're ever looking for how strong writing is done, feel free to also reach out to Attleboro peeps. They do a tremendous job, not only in working with empowering writers, but just really teaching the writing craft in general. One of the things that I did when I moved here as principal, and after coming from 20 years in the business, was that I realized we were going to go with a balanced literacy approach. For myself personally, teaching is really about the whole child, and writing is one piece of the reading and writing and learning process that we need to have all of our students truly love to do. So although we're going to be talking mainly about writing today, I think it's very important to do that through the lens of writing is one piece of a balanced literacy vision that we have for our district, but also really teaching the whole child. And that includes their social emotional needs, their mathematical needs, their perseverance, the resilience, all of those pieces that create these neat kids that we want to be able to leave us successfully. In Plainville, when I arrived 6 years ago, we were struggling, as many districts were, with how we going to tackle our state standards. And although many of us have taught writing, it was really clearly going to be a new challenge with teaching different types of writing. And as I've also often told my teachers, teachers are superheroes. And I'm amazed every day when I walk through my classrooms and see all that teachers do and how they juggle 10 different things at the same time. But where I know not only myself as an educator, but also as an evaluator, need to support kids is really of how do we do everything to the best we can. And we want truly anyone who's educating our kids to be really good at what we do. And where we saw some glaring holes was how we were teaching writing in Plainville. So what we needed to do was step back, kind of look at what do we have in place. And what I realized was we had some curriculum chaos was a term that was used. And I kind of laughed when I heard that, but that's what it was. We were coming with with strategies from Lynx and John Collins and 6 Traits. And then there was teacher paid teachers and Pinterest and all different things that were going on. And I said, I'm pretty sure that I know a better way of finding a system that is still going to allow teachers to make writing their own, but it's going to give them some foundational skills. And that was some of the work that I had done over in Attleboro with Empowering Writers. And it really was just what we needed in Plainville. And what we did was we said we're going to have a vision for the district. Our ELA curriculum team worked together. That's someone from each grade level. We're not a program-based district. We really teach to the standards. We assess regularly. We progress monitor successfully. We're also doing a lot of collaboration between our teachers, between our grade levels, both as teams vertically. There's a lot of teamwork between our coach and the administration, as well as our coach and our teachers. So all of those were things that we were trying to put in place to really apply some powerful practices to get our kids, one, to show that they were becoming stronger writers for state tests, but more importantly, they were going to become stronger writers as a form of communication. We know that writing expectations really they've changed because of social media, because of the way kids communicate with one another, with technology, and we needed to step back and say, how are we going to not only have our kids learn to love to write, but be successful communicators? Some of the things that I have done had a lot to do with professional development. I had a very supportive superintendent when I went to him and I said, this is what I need to happen. We know that budget is often a driving force in what professional development can happen. We tried to think outside of the box. We prioritized on what we had to have, what would be on our wish list, but some of the things that had to be consistent from my viewpoint, not only as the principal of this building, but also as the co-coordinator of ELA for the district. It did become a focus for writing my first year here, and we were writing across all content areas, but we also spent a lot of time educating teachers, parents, kids on what empowering writers and what really being teachers of writing looked like. And then what we moved forward to was making it our own. Similar to a reading and writing workshop in our balanced literacy vision, we knew that we needed to break down what we were teaching in writing. Our teachers, we did a lot of modeling for our teachers on mini lessons. We did a lot of modeling for guided writing and small groups. And we're also working our way towards a stronger vision for one-to-one conferencing. We knew when we were teaching writing, those were some of the pieces that had to be happening, along with what types of writing. Modeling was something that not only from my input, but Amy's and the classroom teachers, we had to let go of these blank pieces of paper and say, go write, but we're going to model examples of strong writing whenever we could. I think what I'm going to do is, Amy and Allie also bring a lens of some of the work that we've done on the actual rollout. Now, our rollout really isn't a rollout anymore, but we feel every year we assess and we adjust. We know that we now, 5 years later, have a very strong consistency and continuity in how we want to teach writing. It is a piece of our balanced literacy. There is an accountability piece from myself as the administrator. There's also an accountability piece from the state with our assessments, with our district-wide assessments that we do. through our RTI and MTSS system to make sure that no one's falling through the cracks. But where we've really spent more time in the past year is how are we embedding what we know and how to teach writing across content areas. No matter what, there's never going to be enough time in the day to teach writing just in isolation. And we also know, especially with our younger students, connecting it to exciting things that they're learning has really hooked these kids. As I'll say again at the end, but although we are this small little district in Massachusetts, our doors are always open. My email usually almost always gets answered, and we love what we do. We love teaching these kids how to read and write. We so enjoy watching them learn, but we're going to go a little bit deeper now with Amy and Allie on how some of the pieces were on how we really created an environment of strong writers. So Amy Traficante, who is our ELA coach, which is exciting also to know that before she was our ELA coach, she was also our ELL specialist. We often wear many hats, but I love that she brings that lens and background with her when she connects. All right, Amy.
Thank you so much. Like Kate said, I'm Amy Traficante. I'm currently our ELA coach and our co-ELA curriculum coordinator. Although Kate is in the K-3 building, I'm full district, so I go all the way from K-6. And before that, I also taught first and second and sixth grade as well. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we use writing to, how we kind of match up our writing instruction and apply it to some of the state testing that our kids receive in Massachusetts. And I know some of you are from Massachusetts, but some of you from all over, so I'm going to give you just a little background first. In 1993, Massachusetts, the citizens here passed an Education Reform Act, and part of that became the Massachusetts Comprehensive Assessment System, and it started testing students in grades 3 through 10. It was primarily a reading assessment. It was only used as a writing assessment in grades 4 to 7. They both, in grade 4 and grade 7, had a long composition that they had to complete. And those compositions were primarily personal narratives. They often asked kids things like write about a family tradition or write about someone that is special to you. We got into a little bit of trouble with our ELL students when we asked them to write a personal narrative about what they did on a snow day. And we had some kids that had never experienced that coming from other places. And then slowly moved into some like imaginative prompts. And that was primarily what kids were asked to do. And so you can imagine writing was very important to our 4th grade teachers and our 7th grade teachers, but we really needed to make a shift as a state to include writing across the board. And that shift started when the Common Core standards came out and in 2010. And Massachusetts added a little bit of information to those standards. It was primarily, we added pre-K standards to our frameworks, and we set out to create another assessment. And in Plainville, we decided to opt into the PARC test. So if you're familiar with PARC or Smarter Balance, very similar assessments, and they were overwhelming at first, but as a district, we decided to opt into them early to give our teachers and our students some experience with them, to provide some professional development for them, and also to get our technology where it needed to be for kids to be successful. So as a coach and a teacher, we had to really start looking at making some shifts in our teaching. So I'm going to show you just quickly how we started to do that. What you're going to see in front of you now is an example from PARC, and that's what we started out with. And it's a beautiful 4th grade prompt where they ask kids to read an article about a hippo and a turtle that become friends, and then a video about some birds and mongooses and some of the symbiotic relationships that they have. And this was overwhelming because we had, before this, taught our children to, write about their own personal experiences. And here they're being asked to read 2 texts and synthesize them and create a writing piece. So we started looking at how to best show our children how to do that. And the next slide you're going to see, we used the pillar from Empowering Writers, and we started by modeling and then modeling some more, how to decompose the main ideas and details onto the pillar to help our students see what kinds of things they needed to include in their responses. And it was something that, again, we modeled very frequently, and I'm sure all of you that are working with kids out there know that it's very difficult for children to kind of separate what is the main idea and then what are the details to support it. And this was a very clear visual way to help our students see what they needed to do on this type of task. And then from there, we kind of moved from looking at the samples that Park provided to start creating our own. And we spent a lot of time working with our teachers and giving kids chances to practice this type of assessment. And here is an example that you can see on a social studies piece on exploration, where it was reading an article and watching a video. We often try to combine fiction and nonfiction on the same topic, adding in poetry and fiction so that kids have a wide variety of pieces to respond to and write about. And we've always used that pillar as sort of our staple for how to go about creating your piece. Whether you're looking at a piece through the eyes of a reader to help you understand what the author did, or when you're reading something and synthesizing it and then thinking about how you want to, as an author, display the information you're trying to convey to your audience. And so we kind of moved from a lot of modeling to then like some very structured practice and some release of responsibility. And here's an example of how teachers kind of started with providing the main idea, which we think our kids struggle with more so than finding the key details that support it, and then having kids kind of slowly build in those pieces. We've continued to make this our own in classrooms, but we also have a district-wide assessment that in K-5, we primarily did K-5 was originally narrative, and then 6th grade was argument, and we've made some shifts now that K-4 is a narrative response, and 5 and 6 are both expository response to text.
The next slide is a piece that, as an administrator, I think is very, very powerful to anyone who is saying, but how do I get everybody on the bus? I've got a couple people on the bus. I've got some people who want to pilot. We know that that happens, and then we've got go-getters. But we also know if we truly want to make a shift and show growth, we need to get everybody truly engaged and have some buy-in. One of the things that I did that I feel was very, very helpful was embedding calibration days into our calendar year. And in the beginning, this was 3 times a year. And they were very targeted. They were very guided by Amy and myself on how we were going to calibrate together. The rubrics were reviewed beforehand. We had to really talk about, as a grade level, what each piece could look like. Anchor papers are very important. Those are always ongoing, but it was really that rich discussion between our teachers of what exactly we wanted from each grade level and what that would look like. An accountability piece that in the beginning was a little bit tough for some, but now it's just part of our culture, and teachers have grown and done a tremendous job, is that we have our writing folders. And these are ongoing, different than a portfolio. And eventually these will be more of a digital portfolio. But what this is right now is accountability to make sure all types of writing are happening. And it's a location for both teachers and students to go to and find some pieces of writing. And whether it be for a conference, whether it be for a place where there is growth producing feedback, both from the teacher as well as maybe a peer, depending on the grade level. But as the principal, I did, in the beginning, collect these writing folders 3 times a year. I would review them, and I gave feedback to the teachers on what their writing was looking like. It was, for any principals out there, something extra on my plate. I definitely was able to then go to 2 times a year. Now I just look at writing folders once a year, but it was a really nice way for me to be able to not only evaluate, but to see who needed some more support, who was nailing it, and who I'd be able to say, hey, I want somebody else to come in and visit what you're doing with your writing, because we feel colleagues truly can learn so much from one another, and we had some great things that were going on. So I do feel that accountability piece for any shift or change that you want to make happen is, yes, it's an investment, but what we've been able to see by focusing on this, we've really been able to, that consistency, grade to grade and class to class, we were able to see pretty much immediate growth, which was exciting. And now teacher, I do bring donuts, we bring snacks, we celebrate, and we have our calibration days. What has been a nice shift in our culture is during PLCs and common planning, it's not just 3 times a year that calibration and discussion of texts. That is ongoing now. My teams do that regularly. So it's taken some time, as anything powerful it is going to take, but it is part of our culture on really working together for what we need to do. Our rubrics have also we've spent a lot of time matching our rubrics for our types of writing. Amy has invested much of her life in making these rubrics live and where they are. But I would say between assessments and rubrics and really making sure the calibration has been powerful in making sure in the growth that we've made. And we'll talk a little bit about some growth that we've made.
And I'm proud to say that I think Calibration Day is one of the funnest days that people actually look forward to, looking at student work and talking about student work and deciding what kinds of shifts they need to make for the next chunk of the year. And we're going to share with you some of our data, because people always say, that all sounds great, but show me some numbers that back up that what you're doing is helping kids. And I'm going to start by talking about kindergarten, which is certainly a labor of love.
And when we started, I do need to be fair to Amy and say that, yes, we have full day kindergarten, but we do feel strongly about our students learning at developmentally appropriate levels too. But there were some more stuck mindsets that kindergartners weren't capable of reading or writing until January. So we did have some shifts to make in our mindset of our educators. And it's tremendous on what my kindergarten teachers have been able to do with teaching writing once we gave them the tools and the go-ahead to do it.
Absolutely. It took us a little while to get there, but the kindergarten teachers very consistently blow us out of the water with what they're able to do from when our little 5-year-olds come in September till the end of the year. We use a K1 developmental rubric to score our kindergarten writing, and they have 5 categories: beginner, borrower, experimenter, meaning maker, and experienced writer. And most of the time it takes us about a half an hour to score those writing pieces at the beginning of the year, because there are a lot of scribbles and pictures and random letters scattered throughout the page. So most of our kids come in at beginners. And even though, like I said, this is a K1 rubric, we felt very strongly that we just wanted to use it in kindergarten, that we want to really be looking at kids producing more text by the time they're in 1st grade. And so our district goal is for kids to move 2 levels over the course of the year. And you can see that we do that very consistently. And most of our students, by the time they leave, are in that meaning maker, experienced writer, which some schools could even use K-1. So it is pretty tremendous to see the growth over time with those kindergartners. The next bit of data I have for you looks at scores 1 to 6. And it shows them over the last 5 years, and it shows kind of the average point increase. Like I said before, we all started with the Empowering Writers narrative rubric in in grade 1 to grade 5, and in 6th grade we used an argument. And that has shifted and adjusted, and we've, as teacher grade level teams, made shifts in those rubrics. We made the most in the 1st grade because we found that it's really unfair to try to score them on suspense when they haven't been taught it yet. So we have shifted in the last year. That last column is it's still based on Empowering Writers, but it's just the pieces of Empowering Writers that we actually use in our instruction with 1st grade. And so that rubric, the scale is a little bit different. So there's a little bit less number of points that kids can get. And we've also shifted in 5 and 6 in the last year or 2 that they are using the expository rubric from Empowering Writers. And again, all of our teachers decide as a team how to kind of changed the language of it to shift and meet the needs of each grade level. Our goal is always for kids to move about 4 or 5 points depending on how many possible points are on their rubric. Some are 24 and some are 28. And as you can see, we pretty consistently hit that number. So we've been really pleased at the consistency that we've seen with kids. And as you leave here at the Jackson School in 3rd grade and go to 4th and 5th and 6th, the teachers often comment on the consistency and the vocabulary, and that kids come in with a clear picture of what narrative and expository and opinion writing looks like, for sure. And we have a few little samples that we want to share, so we have to show off a little bit about these wonderful children. What you can see in front of you is some opinion writing, and we do make sure that we have a balance of opinion, narrative, and expository throughout the course of the year so that kids get exposed to all of them. So these are some K1 opinions. In kindergarten every year, we also do a unit on Mo Willems, so I'm going to show you a couple of those too. And also, this is one of my favorite ones. We use a lot of sentence starters and put them on sentence strips so that kids can really voice their opinion. And this is one of my favorite ones from one of our kindergarten class a few years back. He decided he tried to avoid rotten eggs, which I think is good advice for all of us.
What's been nice also, not just in kindergarten, but throughout the grades, are the sentence stems that have been giving the teachers permission that it's okay that we're sharing and modeling. And grade to grade, we're not waiting just, as I said earlier, with that blank paper. But if someone has used a strong, rich vocabulary or had a wonderful, entertaining beginning, we share that and we celebrate those. And it's not that withholding of, let me see what you can do, but we're really trying to front load and model all of the different things that we would love for them to be able to do and share. Because we realized by building it, they're going to eventually, that gradual release, they are becoming independent writers. And carrying those in science centers and through our math journals, it really has made, I think, the mindset of, I hate to write, writing is hard. I rarely would hear that in a classroom. And that would go for all of my students, all of my strong writers who came in as writers and continue to love to write, but also my struggling writers and readers. And that stigma of writing is hard has really, really dissipated. All right, keep going.
Okay, here's a couple more. These are some book reviews and book recommendations in 2nd grade. And see, it's always displayed, and kids always get the opportunity. We don't go through the entire writing process with every piece, but we certainly want to make sure that kids have opportunities to bring things all the way through the writing process. We're going to show you some more that are from 2nd grade. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to show you a couple more, and then we're going to let Allie talk about 2nd grade as well. This is some research projects on insects in 2nd grade.
Okay.
And we also have some samples of narrative. One more.
Yep.
Yep, there we go. As well in, this one is from 1st grade, I believe.
It lives in all of our classrooms. It's exciting to walk through the halls. The teachers display. You're going to see the standards matching up to both the pillar as well as the diamond. You're going to see really creative, hands-on learning that the kids have done, that they are showing off and showcasing. But also what has been neat in the past couple of years is teachers really making it their own. And Allie Dunn, who is here, is truly a master of taking the foundations of empowering writers and taking it to a new level of making it her own and live within her classroom. Keep going. Mm-hmm. Okay.
This is another, we talked about kindergartners before. This is another one of my favorite ones. By the end of the year, this is a kindergartner who wrote, I was surprised to see the sun was very hot. Looking closely, I noticed the princess had a pink dress and a gold crown. I closed my eyes and heard the music in the castle. And so that, I think comes with a lot of modeling and a lot of practice and a lot of story reading. And we just are very impressed with how our students grow and change over the course of the year.
And that came from a classroom where an earlier belief had been, oh, they don't write in kindergarten. We don't pick up pencils till January. So it was very exciting for the teacher to share that with us and say, look, Kate, look what these kids are doing. And it was a celebration. It really was.
The next one you're going to see, this was actually a sample from second grade, but we liked it so much. And if you are not familiar with The Mysteries of Harrisburg by Chris Van Allsburg, I highly recommend it. We actually use it now for our third grade district writing prompt that kids get a choice of one of the pictures. You see here, the birds are kind of coming off the wallpaper. And they get a little sentence starter, and that's what they use to create their district writing prompt in third grade. So they do get a choice of like 3 or 4 pictures at the beginning, middle, and end of the year. And then another one before I turn it over to Allie, this is a 4th grade sample too, where we used a lot of one of the model curriculum units in Massachusetts has to do with where the mountain meets the moon. And one of our writing pieces here is when kids, they read up to a certain point in the folktale, The Wave, and then they have to finish the story. And that was, again, trying to mimic some of the things that our students are exposed to when they take the MCAS test in the spring. I'm going to let Miss Allie, our second grade teacher, tell you a little bit more about her class and what the writing there looks like.
Sure. So I know we've talked a lot about weaving the 3 different types of writing and how they live in each grade level and in each classroom. This is an example of an opinion piece we just recently wrote. So a lot goes into it, a lot of pre-work, a lot of modeling. We read 2 different stories, actually also by Chris Van Allsburg. And then students had to decide which one was their favorite. And you can see on the planning pillar to the right, very specific sentence stems that they can borrow for their introduction. They have their reasons right on the class posters that they can choose right from. So it's very scaffolded. It allows students to be successful, and then they're able to stretch it into these really beautiful, strong, convincing opinion pieces that in December, I was blown away with what I was seeing. So it's pretty cool. You give them the steps that they need, you give them the supports that they need, and then they take it and they run with it. And eventually it does become more independent as the year goes on. If you look at the next screen, this is a little glimpse into my classroom. We have some cute faces there. This is what our writer's workshop looks like. More often than not, I will post on the screen the steps that students will go through kind of the planning process. You'll see step 1 is to plan on that pillar. Step 2, I do have them choose sentence starters to kind of bring them from one reason to the next. Step 3, they're taking those ideas, they're stretching them. Step 4, the editing and revising is still tough at this grade level to do independently, but we're encouraging them to go back, reread. Can you fix anything? Can you change anything? Do you have the basics? And then we do conference, where I give them my own feedback. They make additional changes. And then usually there's an illustration, or perhaps we publish it by typing. But you can kind of see we have kids at desks, we have kids at tables, we have students working together, we have quiet chatter, quiet music. It's really one of my favorite parts of the days. I know I hear a lot from them, yes, it's Writer's Workshop. So it is one of their favorites too. And it really allows them to own it and be in charge of their own writing, and they do love it. So, and then the next one, going back to kind of scaffolding and breaking it down, this is just an example. Throughout the year, we like to, in second grade, this is kind of a new goal that we've been doing this year, is break down the parts of a story. And as we introduce them, continue to add them to a whole class narrative to model the really strong language and come up with a story that kind of lives from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. So what we do is we brainstorm. We start right at the beginning. We brainstorm our entertaining beginnings. Everybody gets a chance to share. You can see that in the middle. We take all the ideas, and then we kind of combine and choose what we would like for our class story. After that, we go into the elaborative detail, really digging in and what are we going to describe? The setting, an object, a character, what is it? And then as you can see, we stopped there. We need a little more elaborative detail there. And then once we introduce suspense and the main event, then we continue to add to the story, and they can see piece by piece how a narrative is formed. And it's not this big, overwhelming, oh my gosh, I have to write this whole story. It's very thought out and step by step. So it kind of breaks it down and makes it a little bit more manageable for them. And that's all I got.
All right. Thank you, Allie. What we're going to talk a little bit before we wrap up is One of the sayings we have around here at the Jackson School is hashtag the struggle is real. Now, by no means do we want anyone listening to think that we are experts. We have continued to grow, assess, reflect, and learn. We feel education as a whole is always in movement. We're trying to slow it down a little bit to say, what are we doing well? What do we need to make sure that we are going to have really to show strong sustainability for what we are teaching and what our kids are learning. Again, I can't say enough how important the whole child to really have a balance between the rigor needs to live there, but we also need to make sure that we are sending off productive, well, healthy, mentally, physically together kids out into the world. We appreciate that Empowering Writers, although we don't really consider it a program, and that's what I like best about Empowering Writers, is that it has grown with us. My teachers continue to take pieces and make it their own, but yet if I have somebody new coming in or has changed a grade level and never taught that either content or skill before, it's a really nice scaffold for them and a starting place for them to say, I feel comfortable, I feel good about teaching writing. We appreciate that Empowering Writers has listened to some of the technology needs that we have. We are in Massachusetts taking our state tests digitally, and that is in itself a struggle, especially for my third graders. You know, is it writing that we're trying to teach or technology skills? So there are all different areas that we're trying to come at as we really increase our learning here. For ongoing development for us here, we really enjoy exploring the hub from Empowering Writers, and again, using some videos, using the text analysis and connecting to what we're doing. We think it's important to be educating our parents. They really appreciate when they see things on either Class Dojo or Seesaw, and you know, a diamond that they see, oh, that makes sense. You want a beginning, middle, and an end. There are some things some very small shifts that have been very powerful for us. We're going to continue the road that we're on. We feel good, the teachers feel good. Our scores are looking pretty good, even with all the challenges that we have. What I want to say before we do wrap it up is we are right off the highway on 95. Our doors are always opened, and we love what we do. We love being teachers of writing. We do so much with reading and writing together, as well as cross content. We are available for questions or answers or even silly things. We've had many people come and spend some time at the Jackson School and say, can you take me to third grade? Can you walk me through kindergarten? I'm coming to you, Kate, with 20 questions, and I was wondering if you could answer them for us. I personally love, even though this is a very challenging business that we're in, I love the business that we're in. So I want to be clear to all of anybody who's listening, if there's something that I can do to help you with the work we're doing, because hashtag the struggle is real, please let me know. And the legs of the district are my teachers. I know that Allie Dunn does a tremendous job and is such a leader for the teachers here in the work that she does in bringing writing alive to her classrooms, as well as Amy from our preschool to sixth grade classroom lens as well. So speaking for everybody in Plainville, whatever we can do to make your journey of becoming stronger writers in these little bodies and people that we're working with, please let us know. All right, back to you, Dia.
Thanks. So Kate, just a couple of questions came up while you were speaking, so let's address those first, and then I have a few others that I thought of as we were going along here. The question about the writing folders. Somebody was asking about what grade levels need to have them and who calibrates them with you.
So our writing folders are kindergarten on up. So I do have my kindergarten teachers start with those. And in the beginning, the teachers have already calibrated together before pieces get into the folders. So often I'll sit in on calibration day already. I've had my superintendent sit in on calibration day, but usually it's Amy and myself who are looking at the second lens of the writing folders. The teachers have already looked at them themselves as well as with their team. Allie, how would you explain your writing folders?
I would say we generally pick an example of a strong narrative, opinion, and expository, and then we actually weave in some math and science writing as well, and have a solid example beginning, middle, and end of the year to collect. And then we do give it back to the students too, and they take a look and they reflect on how they've grown and how their writing has changed and just the big differences that they see since September. And then we have that conversation with both Amy and Kate of what progress did we see, what else can we do differently next year, did the growth happen, and then we kind of go from there and adjust each year after that.
And they go home too.
Yeah, they go home, we share them with the parents, they bring them back, it's very exciting. They usually all come back, which is great. So that's another piece too, the parent contact.
Going through them gives us an opportunity to kind of reflect as a district and a grade level to see what kinds of professional development we need to offer for teachers, what other materials we might need, and things like that too.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. And can you share a little bit about the rubrics you use for K through 5?
Sure. So the kindergarten rubric is a developmental rubric for K to 1. Kids, the continuum is the name of the rubric. And then we started in 1 to 5 with the Empowering Writers rubric, the one that's available right online. And we use that for a few years pretty religiously without making any adjustments. And then through those calibration days and scoring conversations and thinking about what was most appropriate, we made adjustments. Like I remember in 4th grade, we had a long conversation about how the teachers felt like you have to stop the action. And so that was an important part that we kind of bolded in like our 3 on the rubric, the proficiency benchmark on the rubric for elaborative detail, where maybe in 3rd grade we had conversations about how we were looking for a lot of description, but it might not really stop and slow things down and stop the action. So we kind of shifted and adjusted. In 1st grade was our most difficult, and we did want to start with the most rigorous one we had and kind of make adjustments from there. And so that one now just looks at entertaining beginning, main ideas, endings, and then the sentence structure and fluency part.
And we talked about the moving target.
Yes. Oh, and we also did kind of make a shift. We also use the Fountas and Pinnell assessment system for our beginning, middle, and end of the year reading assessment for students. And because that is on a sliding scale, where we expect to see, the benchmark for the beginning of the year is not the same at the end, we kind of shifted that as well. So we also kind of writing. So we looked at where we want kids to be at the end of the year, and then the middle, and then the beginning. So we do have a sliding scale for that as well.
Which was in some ways stressful for the teachers, because when you thought you were getting close to where they needed to be, the target or the benchmark was increased. So that was kind of a reality check, but again, it was just data. There wasn't an evaluative piece that I was putting on as the administrator for these scores, but it really was to say, where are we at with our kids and how are we going to get them? The state standards are tough in all of the states, but it really is hard to meet the needs and the outlines of the state. And we felt by continuing as the year progressed, it also made sure that we didn't stop any of the teaching that we were doing, that we continued as the year moved along, we moved along.
And we do have a feeling that data is just data, and if there's a lot of red is our color that we use for below where we want to be, and if there's red, that's okay, and we
try to grow the green, but
yes,
it's okay,
and we keep moving and shifting as we need to make those adjustments. And we do at the end of each year, as a ELA curriculum team and as grade level teams, talk about shifts that need to be made, whether it's the language of the rubric, whether it's in the prompt that kids are given, whether it's in like the supporting materials kids have. All of those things are refined at the end of each year. And no matter how good we think we have it in September, we make some changes in June, for sure.
Great. I do have another question. When you were talking, you touched on the writing across the content areas. How do you address that in science and social studies? And do you require them to be trained in how to teach writing? Are you finding that the teachers are able to apply those writing skills?
That was a tough sell in the beginning, more so in the building next door. That was 4, 5, 6. In the building here, preschool to third grade, it lends itself more naturally as it would be one teacher. But when we talked about a collective responsibility, not just for writing, but for everything, social emotional needs, for mathematical thinking, for mathematical practices, we did have to shift some mindsets that you just don't teach writing in a writing block, that it needed to live elsewhere. So that was tough in the beginning, but in time and PD and some simple shifts and examples of how we could do this, we had far more buy-in. But Allie, you can talk to that too.
I would say too, in science and social studies, we have a lot of different, in grade 2, we have a friction unit, an erosion unit, a habitat and animal needs unit, and within those, there's so much writing that goes into it, but in those specific units, we have these kind of final projects where they do a little research, and then they have this expository piece to show for it, and it just makes sense to use the same skills that we've been learning through writing and good practice, and here's my main idea, and here are my details, and that totally makes sense for how you want to structure your piece about habitats or erosion. So it does kind of have this fluid balance, and it's not, to me, I don't think of it as separate. It kind of lives all throughout the day. And we bring in the pieces that they've learned in writing lessons into our science and social studies as well.
We are very lucky that our district has invested in PLCs as well as common planning time. So teams are meeting twice with just their teams, once a week with myself for an RTI data and some assessment, another 30-minute block. So that collaboration lends itself to how can we really be doing more cross-content collaboration.
And Kate, you mentioned that when you first started, there was so much modeling that took place, and you talked about we constantly modeled. Who actually did the modeling in your building?
That's funny that you asked that, because selfishly, I loved to do, I missed being a classroom teacher. I missed being a literacy coach. And there would often be times that I'd walk into a classroom and say, what are the chances of me taking over this writing lesson for you? And then it would be a joke. Hey, Kate, can you come in and teach a writing lesson? But Amy, as the literacy coach, does a lot of modeling. And we really have spent time invested in learning walks in our district. And for a couple of years, we did focus points on different types of writing, not only just writing for writing, but also writing across content areas. I feel the best teachers are the people are in the room next door to you. So we've had that opportunity. And then we've also reached out to empowering writers and said, you know what? We need Diane to come in and spend a day with us, and we're going to do a retreat for second grade, and we're going to have somebody come in and show us a lesson that some of the teachers are struggling with, and can you model that for us? So we do all different types of modeling when we feel that there's enough people who are struggling with a certain type of skill or strategy that they want to use. We call in the big guns with empowering writers, which Allie, I know that's been very successful when we have that opportunity.
Yeah, we love that.
But it could be from colleagues, it could be from Amy, it could be from myself, but also from empowering writers.
And Kate, and from your vantage point, I think when we talk to districts and we talk with our partners in terms of where they need help, I think one of the biggest weaknesses that we see across the board is the teacher's confidence level in teaching writing on their own. Can you speak to how where your teachers started when you first started with empowering writers to how they have grown in terms of taking it on their own?
Absolutely. I was hesitant when I saw what was going on when I arrived. There were some teachers who are amazing teachers, but out of fairness to them, I believe them to be true superheroes. You can't be an expert in everything. And where it was getting a little bit gray was knowing the writer's audience. And I understood pretty clearly by being in classrooms, teachers needed to make some shifts on what are we teaching and how are we going to go about teaching it. And empowering writers really lent itself to a very familiar, easy to handle, easy to manage, make your own style of this is how we're going to teach opinion writing, and this is how you could make it your own. If you need to be using an empowering writers lesson, to get yourself comfortable and confident in a strategy, you do that. But I would say also, I did do a go big or go home, in that it was an administrative decision on my end that everybody was going to be using empowering writers when we started. It was too hard for classes to go from one grade to the next, and there be so much inconsistency in what kids were coming with. Some kids would know what a narrative was, and some kids didn't. So from kindergarten to 6th, the consistency that empowering writers lent us in what kids were knowing and sharing was very, very exciting for the teachers. I know, Allie, you having kids come up from 1st grade, even now my preschool has started some very basic empowering writers, beginning, middle, and end. And we had a kindergartner this year say, hey, that's the diamond, walking into kindergarten. And that was pretty cool.
Yeah, the common language is definitely there, which is a huge help from day one, knowing that they have a sense of what you're going to teach them. You're going to dig deeper in each grade, but they have that common language already.
And it's not really just writing to write, but why are we writing this piece? Who are we writing it for? More so than just write a story.
That's excellent. And I have to just commend you, all three of you, on the ability that you've had to take writing out of that block. I think it is absolutely a paradigm shift for so many teachers that they see writing as a certain time in their day. And I think the way that we really cover meaningful ground with both reading and writing and increasing the comprehension is to move all of those really valuable writing lessons across the curriculum. And as I'm sure you've experienced, those writing lessons are really, so many of them break down into reading strategies.
Right, and the other emphasis that we've really put here in Plainville is, and this comes down to budget too, are the amount of texts that are in our students' hands. So with our balanced literacy, we've really spent any nickel and dime that I can piece together on different types of texts to get into our kids' hands, and learning that love to read, because if they're learning to love to read, more than likely they're going to learn to love to write. So we have so many different varieties of science books that the kids can read, and social studies, and high interest or different genres. So building up our literature has also built up our readers and writers.
That's excellent. Well, Kate and Amy and Allie, I really can't thank you guys enough for the good work that you do. I think it's really invaluable for other administrators to see how you can make it your own and how you can support writing in your building, be it with empowering writers, be it with what you already have. I think the question that we should all ask ourselves is, what are we using right now for writing? Is it making a difference? Do my teachers need more help? And I think when we do those assessments in terms of what teachers are able to do, we usually find out that there are some definitely holes in the instruction, and how we can help them to enhance their curriculum. So at this point, we're gonna wrap up the Q&A, and I want to thank all of those of you who have attended for joining us today. We're going to stay on for just a couple of minutes and talk a little bit about empowering writers and a few more specifics about what we offer and what we have. And then if anybody has any additional questions, feel free to drop them into the box. I think we've addressed most of the questions that were presented to us. And just before we sign off, I just want to tell you, in terms of empowering writers and what we offer, we have consulting services that we do, which is one of our favorite things to do, is actually sit down with our district partners and really get a sense of what they need. What are their issues with writing? And I always like to say, in the best case scenario, in the perfect world, what is it that you want to see happen? That's always where we start with the big picture, and then we back into how we can make that happen for either individual schools or total districts. We do have instructional resources, and we're happy to say that we have them both in print and in digital. I know that Kate talked about the fact that they've invested in the Hub, which is a very dynamic online component that allows teachers to go in and see modeled lessons. It has built-in direct student applications. There are PowerPoints for the delivery of instruction. There's what we call virtual field trips that builds up backgrounds for students before they read text. So not only do they have the opportunity to read a lot of rich vocabulary, but they get to have that background built through the virtual field trips that we offer. There is also some really great peeks into the classroom where you can see it modeled for students, so that you can actually see a teacher take the lesson through. And that all of that lives in the hub, and certainly we're happy to provide you with more information about that. In terms of professional development, I'm happy to say that we have a lot of ways in which we support our districts and our teachers. We do offer workshops in many areas, and if you go onto our website, you can see where those workshops are being offered. In those situations, teachers sign in and come to a workshop, and they get a full one-day presentation on whatever workshop they're signing into. Another way those workshops work is that we can actually come to you, and we call those on-sites. So districts will talk to us about what their teachers need, where they feel they need some more support, and we send trainers right onto their sites where they can work with their teachers directly. We've also been doing a lot more work with webinars, creating, in many cases, really customized webinars for either teachers who have been through our workshops, have been trained, or have some specific needs in terms of what's next. Clearly, as standards change, teachers need to be brought up to speed on how else can we help meet the need. You know, one of the things that we see, the skills that we see coming into play more and more is the ability for our students to read text, to respond to text, and to look at text both narrative and expository in nature in a side-by-side format, and be able to answer some direct questions. Well, that really requires direct instruction, and we have to show teachers how best they can simplify the process. The good news in that is that as teachers who have been using Empowering Writers and have been really annotating writing and looking at writing with author's eyes, a lot of the skills that go into reading comprehension tasks are what's embedded in Empowering Writers from our writing vantage point. So as we teach kids to read with what we call author's eyes, they take those author's eyes and they're able to really respond very strategically to text. So those webinars come in a variety of ways. And then we do some in-school coaching. So as we all know, one day is rarely enough. So that as we start to look at professional development and what your needs are, we can put together a whole package that might include a combination of workshops, of the webinars, and in-school coaching. And coaching that comes on site with the hope that we are gradually releasing your teachers. Our coaches model for your teachers model for us. It's really a very safe environment in terms of which our job really is to encourage teachers to be learners and to see how we can support the process. So for those of you who are interested in reaching out to us directly, you can go to our Ask Us, or you can call us at our number. We're always here, and we'll be happy to get back to you with more information. For those of you who attended today, you will be getting a copy of this particular webinar, and I really appreciate that Kate and Amy and Allie are so open to having any of you contact them with more. Certainly, they are the best resources to let you know how they made this work. So if you have those kinds of logistic questions, I would absolutely take them up on their offer, and you get an opportunity to see a really dynamic school in play. So thank you for your time today. Thank you for attending, and we look forward to hearing from you.